Can you imagine finding out your entire life was a lie? That you had not one, but two identical brothers you never knew existed? And that this separation was intentional, all for the sake of a secret scientific experiment? It sounds like a Hollywood movie, but for Robert Shafran, Edward Galland, and David Kellman, this was their unbelievable reality. This is the story of the identical triplets separated at birth, and the dark nature versus nurture study they were unknowingly a part of. Our story begins in 1980. A 19-year-old named Robert Shafran arrives for his first day at Sullivan County Community College in New York. From the moment he steps on campus, something strange happens. People he's never met are greeting him with surprising familiarity, calling him Eddie. One person even gives him a kiss. Confused, Robert asks what's going on. It turns out his doppelganger, Edward Eddie Galland, had just transferred from that very college. Robert's new roommate was Eddie's best friend. He took one look at Robert, realized the unbelievable resemblance, and immediately drove him to Eddie's house. When the door opened, they stood face to face, staring at their own reflection. They had the same hair, the same smile, the same mannerisms. They quickly discovered they were both born on the same day, July 12, 1961, and had both been adopted through the Louise Wise Services Agency. They were brothers, twins separated at birth. Their incredible reunion made headlines. The story was a feel-good sensation, a one-in-a-million coincidence. But the story was about to get even more incredible. Miles away in Queens, another 19-year-old David Kellman saw their picture in the newspaper. He stared at the two faces, identical to his own. He looked at the birth date, his birth date. He looked at the adoption agency, his adoption agency. He picked up the phone when he called Eddie's home and said, "I think I'm the third one." The impossible became real. They weren't twins, they were triplets. The reunion of Robert, Eddie, and David was a media frenzy. They were charming, charismatic, and their story was captivating. They appeared on talk shows, moved into an apartment together in New York City, and even opened a successful restaurant called Triplets. They were inseparable, making up for 19 years of lost time. They discovered uncanny similarities. They all smoked the same brand of cigarettes, were wrestlers in high school, and were attracted to the same type of women. It seemed to be a powerful argument for the power of nature, that genetics could shape so much of who we are. But as the initial euphoria of their reunion faded, darker questions began to emerge. Why were they separated? Their adoptive parents had never been told their son was a triplet. They began to dig, and what they uncovered was a secret far more disturbing than they could have ever imagined. Their separation was not a coincidence. It was a deliberate, calculated act. The triplets had been the unknowing subjects of a secret psychological study conducted by a prominent child psychiatrist, Dr. Peter Neubauer, and the Child Development Center in New York. The adoption agency, Louise Wise Services, had colluded with the researchers. The purpose of the study was to resolve the age-old nature versus nurture debate. By placing genetically identical siblings into homes with different parenting styles and economic backgrounds, the researchers hope to track their development and see how much of our personality is shaped by our genes versus our environment. Robert was placed in a wealthy professional family. Eddie was placed in a middle-class family, and David was placed in a working-class, blue-collar family. For nearly 2 decades, researchers made regular visits to each family's home. They filmed the boys, administered psychological tests, and conducted cognitive assessments. The adoptive parents were told this was all part of a standard child development study that many adopted children participated in. They had no idea their sons had identical brothers living just miles away, undergoing the exact same tests. The researchers were collecting data, observing them like lab rats, all while maintaining the devastating secret. The ethical violations are staggering. There was no informed consent. The parents were deceived, and the children were denied the fundamental bond of brotherhood. The study treated human lives as mere data points in a long-term experiment. When the truth came out, the joy of the reunion was overshadowed by a sense of deep betrayal and anger. The brothers felt their lives had been manipulated for science. The uncanny similarities they once celebrated now seemed like footnotes in a researcher's notebook. The revelation also cast a dark shadow on their personal struggles. All three brothers had shown signs of mental health issues from a young age. They had each exhibited separation anxiety as infants, banging their heads against their cribs. As young men, they all struggled with periods of depression. The question lingered. Were these struggles a result of their genetics, or were they a deep, subconscious trauma stemming from their separation at birth? For Eddie Galland, the struggle became overwhelming. He had always been the most emotionally turbulent of the three, and his battle with bipolar disorder intensified. In 1995, at the age of 33, Eddie tragically died by suicide. His death was a devastating blow to his brothers, and a grim consequence of the secret they were forced to live. What about the results of this unethical study? What conclusions did the scientists draw after decades of deception? We may never know. Dr. Neubauer never published the full findings. The vast archive of data, including hours of film and thousands of pages of notes, was sealed. The records were placed at Yale University with the stipulation that they cannot be unsealed until the year 2065. By then, all the primary subjects and researchers will likely be gone. The decision to lock away the data has been widely condemned as a final act of cowardice, preventing the subjects from ever truly understanding what was done to them and why. The Jewish Board, which oversaw the center that ran the study, has since issued a formal apology for its role, acknowledging the immense pain it caused. The story of Robert, Eddie, and David was brought to a global audience in the 2018 award-winning documentary, 3 Identical Strangers. The film powerfully details their journey, from the joy of their reunion to the heartbreak of discovering the truth and the tragic aftermath. It forced a public reckoning with the ethical boundaries of scientific research and the human cost of pursuing knowledge at any price. The story of the triplets is a profound and cautionary tale. It's a story about lost time, the unbreakable bond of family, and the devastating impact of secrets and lies. It challenges us to think about identity, free will, and the forces that shape us. While the science remains locked away, the human story is a powerful testament to the fact that you cannot experiment with people's lives without causing irreparable harm. Thank you so much for watching. This is a story that really sticks with you, and it's important we remember it. What are your thoughts on this experiment? Let me know in the comments below. And if you found this story as compelling as I did, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into incredible true stories. See you in the next video.